Hi guys, Olive here. Today me and my wine glass are here to bring you my August 2016 wrap-up and my September 2016 TBR. This one is super timely this month because I have been working insane hours over the last month. My job got a new client right at the beginning of August, so I have been working tons of overtime since then. I also started school at the end of August, so it has been a little bit chaotic. I still have been reading to a certain extent. I'm just gonna have to make some adjustments based on my current schedule because I'm not gonna be able to read 10 books when I am both working 50 hours a week and going to school. Just not gonna be possible for me. Now you understand why I need wine. Am I right? I'm gonna kind of gauge how many books I should be putting on my TBR per month based on how September goes. So I made it a little bit ambitious, but if I don't get to it, that's fine. I will just use that information for the future. Since my last wrap up, I have finished 5 things. I am currently reading 4 things, and then I have a bunch of my TBR, so let's talk about the books that I did finish since my last wrap up. The first being Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I buddy read this with Leanne from Leanne Rose. I feel like I don't need to go too in depth with the plot summary on this one because this one was hugely popular about a year ago. This is speculative fiction that is set in a world where, I'm guesstimating here since we're never given exact figures, about 95% of the world's population has been killed by a new strain of superflu. We get snippets of this world shortly before the collapse of civilization following this flu outbreak. We get a glimpse into what was going on during the flu outbreak and also snippets of what happened after the flu outbreak. I think it's about 20 years after, in which we follow one of the main characters who is a traveling performer with a troupe of actors and musicians who perform Shakespeare on the road in what used to be the United States. It has a small cast of interconnected characters, and we get to see throughout the novel how their lives intertwine with each other, which is totally my cup of tea. I love novels like that. This was a beautiful book, and it was certainly very intriguing, and I had some great conversations with Leanne. And we both were thinking a lot about the conversation that this book is having with you, as well as a conversation that the characters are having with each other of, you don't realize just how much in our world is so fragile, how all the luxuries that we have in today's world could go away in a single moment. It also makes you think what life would be like without all of the modern luxuries that we have today. It certainly made me think a lot. It definitely made me more appreciative of what I have in my life, more so than I already am. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I would say it's probably inching closer to 4.5 because it is so beautiful and so meaningful. But I have to say I wanted a little bit more from it. It's very short. It's not as lengthy as you would think something like this would be because there's so much to explore with a world following a massive flu outbreak that wipes out the population. We only focus on this small cast of characters, which was rewarding, and I do, to an extent, admire the restraint, but I really wanted to see how this flu outbreak impacted other areas of the world. I don't know if she's planning on writing any more set in this world, but I would definitely read it if she did. I thought it was fascinating. So during the month of August, I started but did not finish The Ascent of Money by Niall Ferguson on audiobook. This one I was listening to on audiobook during my commute and then during work when I was doing some mindless work. But this is a book that needs your full attention. This was not working well as something that I was listening to. When my mind was wandering a little bit, you really need to give this your full attention, and given how busy I was, I just wasn't able to do that this month. So this is something I'm going to come back to at another time because I'm definitely interested in it. But that left me void of an audiobook to listen to, which is always a very sad moment. And everything that I was in the mood to listen to, I had on hold, and nothing was becoming available, which is quite unusual and very infuriating. So I just started browsing my wish list on Overdrive for things that were available, and I saw this book. It is called Empty Mansions, The Mysterious Life of Udette Clark and the Spending of a Great American Fortune by Bill Dedman. I did listen to this on audio. I also requested a copy from the library because it has a bunch of pictures in it. I picked this up initially because the weather is supposedly starting to change now that it's September, and I thought that this was going to be a little bit of a gothic tale. It's not. This is a nonfiction book, which I did know that it was, about an extremely wealthy woman and all of these properties that she owned, these massive mansions around the country that had been sitting vacant. They had crews servicing them and keeping them maintained, but no one was living there. People started to catch wind of these properties, including Bill Dedman, who's a journalist, and went out in search of the owner and found out that it was a woman by the name of Udette Clark, who's the daughter of W.A. Clark, who was known as the Copper King in the United States. This was a man on par, if not richer, than Andrew Carnegie, John Rockefeller. He had an enormous fortune. He gave a part of that to his daughter Udette when he died. He also gave some to his other children as well, obviously. This book talks about W.A. Clark's upbringing, how he made his money, then his political career, and then also his family life. He was married twice. His second wife had 2 daughters, the youngest of which was Udette. And then I'd say in the second half of this book, you're focusing exclusively on Udette, her artistic interests, how she ended up spending her money, how she spent the last 20 years of her life living in a hospital even though she was in good health, her wild, extravagant gift-giving tendencies to people who cared for her odd hobbies and asocial tendencies. Overall, it was pretty enjoyable, but it did drag at times. I can see that if you are not interested in early American industry, the parts focusing on W.A. Clark might not be of interest to you. But I personally did enjoy that, seeing as that is kind of my thing. I also really enjoyed the parts where it talked about just how Udette's fortune was handled in terms of a bookkeeping and accounting way. I mean, I study accounting, I work in finance, and so that was something that kind of appealed to my tendencies, so I enjoyed that aspect of the book. It was an enjoyable listen, especially because you got things in the audiobook that you didn't get in the printed book. We got recordings of Udette herself talking to one of her relatives. Those recordings that we get of her voice are from telephone conversations that she had with a distant cousin. We get to hear from him in the audiobook as well. So listening to it on audio and having the physical book to be able to page through and see the photographs of pieces of artwork that she drew, W.A. Clark's massive mansion that he had built at an enormous cost in New York City. It was really great having both, and I'm glad I did it that way. The next book I read was called 5 Miles from Outer Hope by Nicola Barker. I forget where exactly I heard about this book for the first time, but it interested me enough to put it on my TBR, and then I shot it to the top of my TBR when I read someone on Goodreads say that this book gave them Gilmore Girls vibes. I definitely wanted to read this one during the summer, or what was left of the summer, because this takes place in the summer of 1981. It takes place in a tiny derelict hotel off of the coast of Devon. It follows an extremely tall, foul-mouthed 16-year-old named Medvi and her extremely odd family members. In addition to the odd family situation going on in this book, there's also a draft dodger from South Africa who is staying at the hotel because his father is friends with Medvi's father. He is extremely mischievous, likes to play jokes on people, and kind of has a thing for Medvi. I'll say that I really enjoyed this book because I did, but I could see how people would find this annoying, which people have said on Goodreads. Medvi's voice is very crude. It's very pop culture referencey. It's very snappy. Her younger sister talks kind of like this too, even though she's only like 12. The way I was feeling throughout most of this book about the tone of it was actually how I felt about a scene in Gilmore Girls, ironically enough. It's a scene during the winter carnival that Kirk is running instead of Taylor. And Kirk is being very, very skeptical of the coins that these 2 very young girls are giving him to gain admittance to the festival. He inspects them very carefully and then hands them back saying they're legit. And the 2 girls walk away and one of them says, "Good going, Columbo." And my response to that is always the same. Who talks like that? What young people talk like that? I know those young girls would have no idea who Columbo is. So that was basically my reaction to this book. These are too young of children to know all these references and all of these swear words. If you want something funny, but you can handle crude and borderline annoying, then this might be for you. The other book I listened to, an audiobook this month, was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I had been wanting to read this book for a long time. I think I briefly tried to read it in high school. I'm glad I failed to read it in high school. I certainly appreciate it more now as an adult. This was nothing like I thought it was going to be. This is about a young man named Dorian Gray who has his portrait drawn for him by an artist who is also a friend of his. And a different friend of this artist puts some not so great ideas into Dorian's head about youth being the only thing that matters in life. And Dorian, then seeing the portrait, becomes jealous that he will always be young in the portrait will always be young, but he himself will grow old. So he makes an emotional plea to the heavens that the portrait grow old instead of himself. And in very dramatic fashion, that comes true. And the more evil and shallow Dorian becomes, the uglier the portrait becomes. He becomes paranoid that people are going to discover his secret. His wrongdoings start to catch up with him. It was way more enthralling than I thought it was going to be. Way more twisted. Lots of things happened that I did not see coming. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, and there were a few digressions that I was kind of thinking, is this really necessary? But some of these characters are absolutely detestable, and it was really interesting trying to figure out why exactly you hated them and why exactly you hated their view on the world as a whole. It was a really interesting introspection that this book gave me. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it and was interested in reading more Oscar Wilde. So I then picked up The Importance of Being Earnest, also by Oscar Wilde. I actually read this one on the Serial app, not like cereal, but Serial. This is a literary app. It was out just for Apple products, but they just released it for Android and I started using it on day 1. It is an app that takes classic works and breaks them up into daily about 15-minute sections and delivers them to your device every single day at a specified time. So I picked The Importance of Being Earnest. It was divided into 9 sections, and every day at 7 a.m. when I'm on the bus, a new issue was delivered that I could read. You can move through them more quickly if you want to read more than 1 section per day, which is what I ended up doing because I absolutely love this play. I remember reading this one in high school and really enjoying it. And I thought that it would be a good idea to reread it after I finished The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I'm so glad I did. It is so much fun. It is so funny, it is so witty, it has extremely interesting characters. The whole thing is a play on words. I feel like if I say anything about it, it will spoil some of the fun. So if you've never read The Importance of Being Earnest, it's so short. What are you waiting for? I guarantee you will love it. So that's everything I finished during August. I am currently reading a few books, which I am hoping to finish up here soon. The audiobook I'm listening to right now is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This one is off of my Young Professional TBR. I feel like it does not need much explanation. It is a classic book on interpersonal relationships. I'm finding it pretty enjoyable so far. I believe I'm a little bit over halfway done, so that one will be finished up soon. I'm still reading A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I've made some good progress with this one, but I've fallen off a little bit because the writing is a little bit elevated because this man is an intellectual. It's not like I can't handle elevated prose. That's certainly not the case. It's just if I'm really burnt out at the end of the day, this is not the first thing I want to pick up. But things are slowing down a little bit. Of course, now that I say that, it'll get crazy again. But I'm hoping to finish this one soon. I am still planning on doing a review of this, God willing. I'm also still reading Uprooted by Naomi Novik. And the reason why I'm still reading this, the reason why I haven't blown through it yet, is because I'm doing the same thing I did during my first reading, in that I am slowing myself down because I do not want it to be over. I do have to say I was worried that it would not have the same magic for me that it did the first time. It still has that same magic and is still producing the same effect of I'm putting it off because I don't want it to be over. But I will be finishing this one soon. I need to buy my own copy because this is one of my favorite books, let's be honest. And this last one that I am currently reading was one that was on the September TBR, but that I picked up yesterday because I feel like I needed to introduce something new to get me excited and on a roll with reading again. That is called Back to Moscow by Guillermo Arrades. This one I'm absolutely loving. If I continue to love it, I'm considering doing a review of this one as well. I am not that far into it, so I don't want to say too much about it, but it is very enjoyable so far. And then lastly, here are the other books that I'm hoping to get to in September. I'm not sure if I will. Again, I'm not sure what my schedule is going to be like, but these are some options. The first is The Unchangeable Spots of Leopards by Christopher Jansma. I hauled this one recently. I told you how excited I was about it. and I still am, so I'm hoping to read it this month. All I know is that it has a cast of interconnected characters, which, like I said about Station 11, is one of my favorite things that a novel does. I'm going to be listening to this one on audio while I'm following along the text, and I'm excited to get started as soon as I'm done with How to Win Friends and Influence People. Once I'm done with Uprooted, I want to start another fantasy novel. I've been kind of in a fantasy mood lately. I'm playing Skyrim again and everything. That book is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. I've been interested in this one for a really long time. I think I first heard of this book on Sana of Inkbone's Books channel. And then also Winks from Winks and Ink put this in the original book bath box that was sent out, I think, to a giveaway winner. Ever since I saw that it was included in that box, I've had this book on the brain and have wanted to pick it up. So I'm hoping to do so this month. For a nonfic pick for the month, I'd like to read The Empress of Art by Susan Jacks. This is about Catherine the Great's art patronage, which I'm super excited to read. And then I have 2 campus novels that I'm hoping to read this month. This is a big month for me for campus novels since school is starting again. I'd like to read The Year of the Gadfly by Jennifer Miller. And I'm planning on buddy reading The Bellwether Revivals by Benjamin Wood with Brittany from Under the Radar Books. We've never buddy read anything, so this should be exciting. Also, just a couple months ago, I read Benjamin Wood's second novel, The Ecliptic, which I absolutely loved. Probably one of my top books of the year. So I am super excited to see what I think of his first novel. So that was it. Those are all the books I read in August, what I'm currently reading, and what I'm planning to read for September. If you've read any of them, heard of any of them, or have any comments in general, you know what to do. Put it in the comment section below. Or if you'd like to talk to me on any other social media platform, all of the links to all of my profiles are in the description box below. I am sadly out of wine, so I'm going to go get a refill. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.